You're live back with us tonight, you're in focus. Former KwaZulu-Natal DA leader Zwakele Mncwango has told Newzroom Afrika that there's no space for dissent in the party. Mncwango announced his resignation from the official opposition yesterday after 21 years of service. This comes after he quit as member of the provincial legislature last week. Joining us now to share his thoughts on the latest high-profile resignation is DA spokesperson Solly Malatsi. Solly, good evening and thank you very much for your time and joining us tonight here on In Focus. First and foremost, of course, let's be open and transparent about the fact that we did forward this request to Helen Zille, FedEx leader, particularly to come and answer on the allegations that have been leveled against her. So, explain to us, why did you come instead of her?
Good evening, Thabo. Look, as Helen indicated to your producer, Helen was unavailable this evening because she's making her travels to Joburg, where she's attending to party matters. So it wasn't because of any sinister reason whatsoever.
Mncwango has decided to terminate his membership with the Democratic Alliance and citing amongst the key issues that made him do this was he's seeing an emerging culture in this new leadership of no tolerance to dissent. So freedom of expression is no longer tolerated in the party. That's one of the issues that is being raised, but we'll talk about the others. But just address that for us. I mean, are black leaders in particular, or any leader in the party, allowed to speak their mind, except for Helen Zille?
Absolutely. And it's always, interesting when former colleagues who have occupied very senior positions in the DA leave and then make these utterances about not having had the space to express themselves, because these are people who have occupied very senior positions. And I also watched the interview that Mr. Mncwango did earlier, where he was contradicting himself in the essence that he spent a large amount of time talking about how he always spoke his mind in meetings, and later then claims that, people are being censored and not having the space to state their opinions. The reality, Thabo, is that there are internal structures wherein each and every member of the party enjoys equal standing to express their views. Some people lose arguments in there because in politics we are in the business of persuasion, and if people lose arguments internally because those did not carry wide appeal, that is not an indication of the lack of internal expression. It is primarily an indicator that the diversity of views that prevails, it is those that carry a strong argument that then prevail. And there's been a very unhealthy perception emerging of trying to demonize Helen Zille, who's basically doing her job in ensuring that as the custodian of the DA constitution, particularly given her role, that all members of the Democratic Alliance act in accordance with the constitution. And it is always mindful to bear in mind that all of us join the Democratic Alliance voluntarily, and by joining into, we enter into a contract with the DA through the Constitution that we volunteer to abide to the constitutional requirements of what a member of the Democratic Alliance should and how they should behave. And if you trace the events of this week, Mr. Mncwango announced his resignation from the legislature on Wednesday, I think. There was a statement from the KZN leadership welcoming that. He had indicated in that he would remain a member of the party and that he was going to go into some soul searching about his, next events. And then less than 72 hours, there is a somersault on that position and then announces his resignation of the Democratic Alliance membership.
Yeah. Is there an unhealthy, maybe a tense relationship that exists between Mr. Mncwango and Helen Zille that could have maybe even emanated from the comments that he made in that meeting following the departure of Musi around these experimental token black leaders in the party?
Absolutely not to my knowledge, and in all fairness to Helen Zille and even to Mr. Mncwango himself, there's never been an indication in the past that states to any existing tension whatsoever. So all of this coming in the light of the announcement of his resignation is a surprise to many of us who are aware of the nature of the relationship that Helen Zille enjoys with different leaders in the organization. She's never someone who would not be willing to listen, particularly to differing views. She's always someone who, in the meeting that she chairs, she always encourages that we listen to different perspectives and always goes with the argument that carries the strongest reason and the strongest facts to prevail.
Yeah. So Mncwango says members of the FedEx would attest to that particular tense moment where Helen had to withdraw that statement and apologize. And you're saying that never took place?
I wasn't part of FedEx at that time, so I don't recall being in a federal executive meeting while I served at it that particular alleged statement was supposedly made.
Yeah. So categorically, I mean, this thing of experimental token black leaders, it's not a conversation that is happening in the Democratic Alliance that says we've tried this thing of token black leaders. We are not going to do that anymore.
No, absolutely not. And it will be very insulting to insinuate that kind of conversation would have taken place in the DA with that kind of labeling. It is an inaccurate description and something that I myself has never been part of a meeting where such labeling has been used, because it will be absolutely wrong.
What is the sense then in the DA, Solly? And when more and more, I think we've seen at least 2 or 3 in the last 2 weeks, black leaders in the Democratic Alliance expressing their unhappiness with the direction that the party is taking?
Look, Thabo, I mean, it's an interesting observation when you first listen to the initial reasons that these resignations articulate. I believe is that people, evolve. People reach, their goals, and therefore they reach a stage where they feel that there is nothing more to pursue, because many of these individuals have been in the organization for long. And the reality of the matter is, when people decide to choose other political alternatives, it does not indicate to a lack of talent. In fact, to the contrary, there is a depth of diverse talent in the Democratic Alliance that continues to come up. I mean, not very long ago, we had the appointment of Sibiwe Gwahube as the chief whip of the Democratic Alliance. And you look across, when you look to Umgeni, the deputy mayor there, Zwakele Mncwango, he's a young black person. The reality of the matter is that those people who are finding other new avenues, either motivated by joining other political parties, seem to try and maximize trashing the DA in order to be attractive to their new political homes, because that's what makes their political currency.
And they just so happen to be black? Is that coincidence?
Come again, Thabo?
I'm saying, and the ones who are resigning just so happen to be black. Is that a coincidence?
Well, what I'm saying in this instance is that when you look at the real reasons of the resignations that have been articulated and the departures of those individuals who have then gone on to join other parties, it shows that they are gaining currency from their attacks on the DA. Because if you spend so much within the DA and all of a sudden you now claim that the environment was not allowing for debate to take place, yet you have been at the most senior bodies of the Democratic Alliance, and during that period you never indicated to that, it's a case of people trying to be more attractive to their political homes.
Yeah. It could be that autocratic political culture is beginning to emerge now. Maybe it wasn't 20 years ago when they were joining.
Absolutely. That is incorrect, because again, and just to give you some insights into the leadership structures of the Democratic Alliance, you've got the federal executive, which is the senior national leadership of the party, representative of the 9 provincial leaders and the leaders of the auxiliary bodies of the DA, and that structure replicates itself in provinces, and then there is the provincial council. There is no example whatsoever of any individual who has attempted to raise their hand in any of those meetings to speak on any of the political developments in the party, and they've been censored from doing so. The reality is that there is a difference when members are acting in contravention of the constitution of the Democratic Alliance, and it then becomes incumbent on the custodian, in this case being Helen Zille as the chairperson of the federal chairperson of the party, to ensure that all of us who are members of the party act and behave in accordance with the requirements of the Constitution.
Yeah. So one of the accusations is that you invoke that constitutional privilege quite conveniently. So, for example, an example being made here of public tweeting in social media and airing one's opinion. It seems Mr. Mncwango believes that particularly Helen Zille is allowed to say whatever she wants to say without any repercussions or consequence. But when it is other members, in particular, I suppose, himself, they are censored in the name of constitutionality.
No, that is also convenient coming from Mr. Mncwango, because the Democratic Alliance has a social media policy which guides, which provide guidelines on terms of how members and leaders of the Democratic Alliance should behave on social media. And that guideline is applicable to every member of the Democratic Alliance. And it is applicable to all. Helen Zille herself has previously been charged for contravening or for allegedly contravening that very same social media policy. So it is neither here nor there. The evidence disputes that claim that the Federal Legal Commission is being used selectively to enforce the constitution of the party.
Yeah. Was there a threatening letter given to Mr. Mncwango following his letter of resignation from the legislature coming from Helen Zille?
Well, the letter that came from the office of Helen Zille to Mr. Mncwango was to remind him that in the statement that he has been making subsequent to announcing his resignation, that he must be mindful of the constitutional requirements of members of the Democratic Alliance, because all of us as members of the Democratic Alliance, in terms of the Constitution, we cannot be continuously disparaging the party while also claiming to be members, because there is a code of conduct that is applicable to all members of the party. So the letter wasn't threatened. The letter was a reminder to Mr. Mncwango of the constitutional requirements that are that oblige each and every member of the party to behave and act in a manner that resembles a member in good faith of the organization.
Yeah.
And it was to encourage him to desist from continuing to making those statements because they are in violation of the Constitution.
I don't have the benefit of the letter, so I don't know what it says, but according to him, it amounted to him being muzzled. He says, in fact, it brought back some bad memories of the many times the party had threatened him with disciplinary action just to simply be silenced.
Tabo, in any organization, including the one that you're working for, there is a code of conduct for its employees and a code of conduct for the journalists in terms of how you are expected to behave. And if you act outside the boundaries of that behavioral expectation, one, you will get a reminder of how you're supposed to conduct yourself. This letter is a standard letter that every individual who is seen to be acting in violation of the Constitution gets as the first interaction to remind them of the responsibility they carry of being a member of the party, particularly in how they conduct themselves in the public statements that they make.
Solly, much appreciated, and thank you very much for coming on. That's DA spokesperson there, Solly Malatsi, explaining the party's position on some of the issues that have been raised by Mr. Mncwango, former leader of the DA in KwaZulu-Natal.